here with us today is MarketStar, and we are so excited to have them here. We have Diane Graybeal, the Director of Performance and Analytics, Kacey Harmon, Director of Sales Technology, Matt Nielsen, AI and Data Engineering Manager, and Camille, Cawley, Business Intelligence Account Manager. And directing us today is our David B. Haight Professor of Data Analytics, our Department Head for Data and Analytics and Information Systems, the self-proclaimed King of the Nerd, our very own Chris Corcoran.
Hey, thanks, Ashley. Can you guys hear me in the back okay? Sure. Everything good? Great. Welcome to the nerd session. We're so excited. It's a marketing competition, but we're so excited that MarketStar added this analytics track as well. I am really appreciative to my colleagues here at Utah State, especially Sterling Bone. Let's give him a hand, by the way. I actually moved over to the Huntsman School 2 years ago from the Department of Mathematics and Statistics here at Utah State, and Sterling has been a great colleague. And I think that this competition demonstrates how tightly connected marketing is becoming with data analytics, and so this track illustrates that. And so I'm really appreciative of our panelists. Matt and Diane I've been meeting with for several weeks because we've been kind of gearing up for this competition. And before we get started, I just want to say something about Matt. I was telling Paul Grant earlier, I think we owe Matt some sort of tropical vacation or something for the amount of work he put into getting the data set together that our students actually use. Matt was the one who had some sleepless nights, I think, assembling the data set that we use for this. So I want to kind of give Matt a special round of applause for his work on that. But to all of you, thank you so much. Thanks for coming up here and spending your time and helping to evaluate these student presentations. Now, a couple other just quick points of introduction. One is that Kacey is the only Aggie on this panel. We have... But we also have 3 Weber State Wildcats, so let's hear it for them. So we're well represented in terms of our institutions here and with you guys up here. In fact, I was just talking to Kacey, and I realized when he was just a wee lad, he lived around the corner from me in Smithfield. He went to Skyview High, so that's exciting. I didn't even realize that. Yeah, we were so close.
Yeah, less than 2 blocks, 3
exactly.
blocks.
I've run by his house many times.
Yeah, I've never ran.
Since this is a data kind of analytics panel, of course, we're wanting to tie this into marketing, so don't worry. This isn't going to be a cure for insomnia or anything. We're gonna try to spice this up a little bit and make it relevant. But I think it's worthwhile maybe starting out with a data analytics joke. Do you guys mind? We like to laugh at ourselves as data analysts, don't we? All right. Here's the first one, and then maybe I'll tell some more later too. There are 2 kinds of data scientists. Those who can extrapolate from incomplete data. So anyway, let's move on to something of substance. Now, the thing I love about this panel is really none of these panelists, Camille, Matt, Diane, Kacey, none of these panelists actually kind of started out in a conventional, data analytics field. Is that fair to say? I mean, you all kind of represent different backgrounds, but for me, I mean, I am a statistician. That's my academic profession, but I appreciate how important it is for people from all areas of an organization to understand data better. And so I just want to start out by asking you, and we'll just kind of move around, and if you feel inspired, grab the mic, and if you feel like somebody else is inspired, hand the mic to them. But actually, let's start with you, Camille. Talk about talk about your background a little bit in terms of where you started in school and how you kind of started understanding that data was important, how you became interested in that, and how you kind of saw what its relevance was in the workplace.
Definitely. So I started in sales. Right out of college, I went into banking, and there was a lot of money there, so I loved it. Had the chance to come over to MarketStar and worked as a sales rep on the ad tech teams, including AdRoll and Pinterest. And loved marketing, loved sales. And I realized as I was looking towards the next 20 years of my career that one of my strengths was not data. I needed to learn how to use data, how to read data, how to have that as an influence. Very much so, my management and even my sales skills were, I would call them fluffy. And so I made the decision. Diane actually recruited me over, and I made this decision to go over to the BI team, where now I get to work with all of those companies in sales and marketing, but I am their consultant and their liaison to translate what the numbers mean to them. So big change.
Yeah, thank you very much. And maybe why don't you pass the mic to Matt? Same question for you. Matt actually got his bachelor's in physics from Weber State. Now Matt serves as you're basically a full stack developer, right? And you work in business intelligence as well.
Yeah, so I've bounced around a bit. Definitely started out with physics, got into web development for a while, discovered that I love data and understanding relationships between different data points. Ended up landing a job at MarketStar and was able to kind of grow with them, building data warehouses and doing analytics. And now I'm managing a team that tries to prepare data for Diane's team so that she can do the hard part of figuring out what it all means. But it's funny, you're talking about backgrounds. I got my degree in physics, but a big part of what I loved was we had to do these labs where we would collect data, and then we would use the data to describe the real world. And there was something really powerful about that, being able to look at an observation, collect some real information, and then from that learn something about how the world works. And I think that just stuck with me, and it's something that I still enjoy today about my job, is being able to go out and look at the data that we're collecting across the business and use that to understand the world a little better, and hopefully, make a better career for all of the employees at MarketStar, and better results for our clients.
Thanks, Matt. Diane, you have a degree in business administration, also your MBA from Weber State, and so you have also, I guess, in some sense, kind of bootstrapped in terms of data analytics. I mean, you've just dug in and you've invested a lot of time, as has everybody on this panel. But tell us a little bit about your experience over the past several years as you've gotten more interested in data. How have you accessed resources? How have you kind of done the things that you needed to do to contribute in the analytics area?
Yeah, it's a great question. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a good question. I actually started out at MarketStar as an intern. So believe it or not, it was like, back in the day, I found an opportunity to start out as an intern working on the market analysis team at the time. And one thing that, I realized that I had an interest in data, but in order to be really good at my job, I needed to learn the business as well. And so learning and understanding what the sales teams were doing and understanding different aspects of business is what I think really helped propel me into the spot that I'm in today. So, we can crunch numbers all day long, but if we can't really speak to the story that we're trying to tell, I think that it's a little bit meaningless. So for me, after my internship, I bounced around a little bit on some client teams, had some client-facing experiences, worked in a little bit of an operations role. And so I think more than anything, it's learning different aspects of the business that really helps you become good in data analytics. And, getting my MBA was great too, because that adds other business functions that aren't typical. So.
Thank you very much. No, you've been with MarketStar for between 8 and 9 years, is that right?
It's closer to 14.
Oh, 14. Well, since I'm a statistician, I just have to be within 3 standard deviations, that's all. And then I'm fine. 14, have you been at MarketStar for 14? Did I swap your times? But you've been there about the same time, so you've been there for 14 as well. So maybe between you and Matt, Diane, can you kind of speak to how analytics needs at MarketStar have evolved? I mean, you've been there from a very formative period to a time now where MarketStar has grown very big with a lot of really big clients. I mean, how have the data needs evolved over time, and has that kind of influenced the way that you've had to adapt?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say that there's a couple of things. So one, back in the day when we first started, clients were a little more relaxed with their data. They were sharing it a little more freely, and we were able to do a lot more things. Plus, we worked a lot in the retail space. We have a lot more qualitative type data. And so now we're in the B2B space, and we're working with a lot of really high-tech big companies. They're a little bit more strict with how they're going to share their data. So we've had to adapt in that way. It's probably like the biggest thing. And then the second thing, too, was adding technology. So I'd say about 4 or 5 years ago, we changed most of our reporting and analytics from more manual type reports that were working in things like Excel and PowerPoint, and we moved over to working in dashboards. So our strategy was to figure out if we could make more of a self-serve option for our reporting. And that was a huge change for us, and I think it was a really great shift. Create a lot of efficiencies and it opened the doors for a lot more things that we could do.
So if you want to pass that mic to Matt. So Matt, over your 14 years, I guess with your view now of how analytics connects to all kinds of different parts of the company and functions, obviously, and you guys are good examples of this, not everybody needs to have an actual degree in something highly technical, but for students, say, in a very non-analytics major, at least what's been conventionally non-analytics major for a long time, like, say, marketing, what would your advice be to students now who are preparing themselves for the workforce in terms of things that they can add that would really give them some value, as they're marketing themselves?
Yeah, so I would say that basic data literacy and some knowledge of maybe not exactly statistical methods, but understanding how to make a decision that's based on data is pretty much a base requirement anymore. It's definitely a skill that people are looking for. Kind of adding on to what Diane was saying, we've seen this evolution where companies are leaning more and more into additional platforms that they're bringing into their sales and marketing strategy, and the amount of data that's available has just exploded, right? Because we've got all of these applications now that these companies are using, and those applications are collecting data about what's going on and then presenting the data. What we need is leaders who can look at that data and make decisions based on that data that are going to send us in the right direction. And I do think that's become more of an expectation. So, yeah, definitely best to arm yourself with that knowledge.
Thanks. To underscore that, one thing I sometimes share with students in classes I teach is that Forbes published an article in 2019, so this is 2 years ago now, but at the time that article was published, they pointed out that as much data had been created and stored in the prior 2 years than had the entire previous history of humankind. And that was 2 years ago. And so the rate of data collection is accelerating. And so along those lines, let me get to you, Kacey. You actually graduated from the department that I'm over now, back in the day. With that in mind, just based on what Matt just said, you can go down into a rabbit hole when you have that much data to worry about. And some of the students, I think, who have worked on this analytics competition, this track, have maybe gotten a little taste of that. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of things you can work with, even in a data set like that. How do you focus on the right question? In other words, Kacey, when you're working with when you're working yourself with partners at MarketStar or with clients, how do you ensure that you're not going down that rabbit hole, that you're asking the right questions, that you're answering the right questions, that you're not spinning your wheels?
Yeah, so basically the way I would frame that is you really need to start with what the end objective is in mind, what your KPI is, or what you're trying to solve for, or the kind of the quota or goal you're hitting. By doing that, you can then back into what's actually important, what you actually have control over as decision makers. Is kind of Matt saying, we need the leaders that can make those decisions, and then we need the reps and the employees in this case, and for MarketStar, to be able to drive towards that goal. So in a scenario where you have way too much data and you start kind of going down all these rabbit holes, if you're spending your time focusing on activities or metrics that don't facilitate you towards the end goal, the KPI that you're trying to hit, that's when you become spinning your wheels and you're not making a positive traction and movement. So what you really do is you focus on that end result or KPI that you're focusing on and step back one level. A few years ago, we had a methodology, we still probably use it now, is called AOR, basically activities and objectives and results. And so as you focus on what that result is, you can step back one layer and identify the different objectives that will impact that result. And then you can go even one further and start using the data to drive what are the key activities that each person on the team can do, and you start identifying if this activity will impact this objective, we will move towards our result. But the data might also tell you if you focus on this activity, you're not going to move in the right direction. And so having that leader in place that can identify what those kind of high-level things to focus on is critical to make sure your business is moving in the right direction. Thanks.
Camille, let's go back to you. You actually worked for Pinterest before you worked for MarketStar, so you have obviously deep familiarity with one of MarketStar's big clients. But from your perspective, as you kind of look across the landscape of all the great companies that MarketStar works with, particularly given where you were at Pinterest, how have the data needs for some of these clients been changing, and how are their demands? How has that shaped their demands of you, as a company over time?
Definitely. I'm actually going to start with what has stayed the same. So one thing that is important across those large companies, even down to the small clients that we work with, is WIFM, what's in it for me? And so really it's a matter of way back when all the way to now, we have to be able to answer that for those clients. Diane mentioned this briefly, but the security of data is getting locked down, and so we have to be flexible. I would say that 6 years ago, we could depend on tools to build dashboards and analytics that were wow, and really now it's our hands are pretty tied, but we still have to pull out those same insights. And so one thing, whether that's in sales or in BI, other types of data analytics, it's important to work with what you have, lift where you stand. The coolest part about my job right now is I get to be a consultant. Even though that's not in the job description, I get to go to these clients and tell the story of this is the data we have, this is what it's telling us. Oh, and by the way, if we try to do X, Y, Z, or if we had more data in this direction, this is what we could do for you. So I would say that being flexible is definitely important. That's something that has changed, at least in even just the 2 years I've been with BI. But always the most important thing is to answer the question of your audience of what's in it for them, and not try to make anything wow or amazing if it's not going to get to that point.
Thanks. Joel actually at dinner last night over at the Alumni House kind of gave some gave a great speech to the students, but talked a lot about how in sales and marketing it's vital to be asking questions, to ask the right questions. I guess Matt or Diane, either one of you, can you guys comment on that as well, like the importance of being able to ask the right question and how you ensure that your team is focused?
Yeah, I guess it comes back to the critical element of a subject matter expert. And this is the thing that, you see all this news out there about AI is going to take over the world. And, there's definitely this proliferation of data that's occurring where so much more data is out there, so much more data is readily available. If you look at like natural language processing, we can pull real value out of a transcription of a call now or out of an email, right? And we can do that in a fairly automated way, which changes things, right? Like we have so much more visibility into the different data points. But the thing is, most of these AI engines, they don't understand concepts, right? They're not people. They don't understand the implications of a data point. They just get that it's a number, right? And that subject matter expertise is so crucial. And it's one of the things that makes me really optimistic about the future is this idea not of an AI-led future, but more of a human-led future where AI is helping us to understand things better, but it's still people who understand the real problem and have that context where we can make good decisions that are going to be ethical, that are going to lead to positive results for our company and for the world.
Yeah, and I would just kind of add to that with my team specifically, just having such a close connection with the sales teams is just really vital to being able to ask the right question, because if we just assume that every team is like another, we're going to ask questions that are generic in nature, and we're just not going to ever get to the root of what we're looking for. So working closely with the sales managers and team leads, just really understanding what's going on the team and what their pain points are. It's asking the clients things like, where are you winning? Where are you losing? Things like that, I think really help us start formulating the questions that we need to answer from a data and analytics standpoint.
Great, thanks. I'm really interested in Matt, what you said about AI in particular. Joel was actually telling me I guess it's a funny story maybe in retrospect, but a story about AI gone wrong. I don't know if, Joel, are you here? Oh, there you are. Was this something that happened at MarketStar, Joel, or somewhere else? Yeah. Do you mind just maybe, does somebody do we have a roving microphone yet? Thanks. Do you mind, Joel, just maybe without, with leaving out the details that would be incriminating, but do you mind just sharing that story?
Sure. I won't walk around and be quite as animated as last night. But so as interesting as AI is, right, you have to ask the right questions, and it will do exactly what you ask it to do. All right, I guess I'm on the stage now. Jeez. I thought this was just...
I just want to sit on my knee right here, Joel.
I'll stand by one of my favorite people at MarketStar here. So you have to ask the right questions. It's going to do exactly what you ask it to do. And unfortunately, sometimes malicious or not malicious, I don't know what happened, but as some of our team were responding to chats that had come through for this particular client, we started seeing vulgar responses that just had been put in before. So we started capturing these because we didn't know where it came from. And neither did the client. We're being rated on these chats, and we realized that half of these transcripts that we were getting were the AI bot. And it would respond very specifically about a very specific question that it assumed was the case. And so we had to report those, and it was a flurry to fix those because you're talking about 16 to 20,000 interactions that are happening live where this bot is accidentally responding with some vulgar responses back to clients. So you can imagine that creates a little bit of a challenge for the salesperson that's on the receiving end. Excuse me? That wasn't me. I swear that was our AI bot that I told you I wasn't the AI bot.
Yeah.
So it interrupts and intrudes.
Yeah. Thanks. Sorry to pull you up here. I just thought that story perfectly illustrated, I thought, what Matt was talking about. So thanks. Yeah, be careful. I mean, there are some other famous instances of this as well. There was a super well-known case at Amazon that maybe some of you have read about where they used artificial intelligence to filter their job applications. And their decisions ended up being very, very biased. because their training data was biased. And so they ended up predicting that Amazon should just, or suggesting that Amazon should just keep hiring the same demographic, basically white male demographic that they had been hiring up to that point, because those were the data they had, and so those were the recommendations the AI algorithm kept making. So I don't know if Kacey or Camille, you have a kind of an anecdote like that as well, like a case where you've seen that a case where you've seen that the right questions are absolutely crucial in order to ensure that you don't have any kind of result that goes wrong. Is that something that you've encountered? Using the right data, asking the right question, I guess.
Yeah, I'll touch on kind of the key area of the business that I cover, which is sales technology. And so this might not be as relevant to maybe some of the examples that Joel just gave with AI and a chat bot, but asking the right questions. So my team is responsible for putting together and establishing all the sales technology, primarily going to be a CRM, if you're familiar with customer relationship management tools. Salesforce is kind of one of the more well-known ones. When we begin to architect that from scratch, it's critical that we are asking the right questions on how to establish the input of this data, making sure that we are setting up so that the future processes that, as Matt kind of does his necessary things with the data, and as Diane's team kind of uses that to make decisions and help with the business, it's critical from step one that a team like mine asks those correct questions to the stakeholder on what they're trying to solve for, so that we can establish the right parameters within that CRM to set ourselves up with success. Because if we ask the wrong questions, or we potentially don't use maybe some of our learnings and even potentially AI from previous instances of a Salesforce, it can actually delay our future progress quite a bit, because we have to go back and re-architect this, restructure it, and then collect even more data to correct any mistakes we might have made in the past. So understanding the right types of questions, how are you going to want to use the data, and what the ultimate purpose is of that data on the end is critical.
Yeah, and I mean, any business is really about customer service. You're wanting to ultimately help your client. So with that in mind, I guess, Camille, how would you describe your approach in terms of working with clients to ensure that they're getting the most out of their data, and that because I think there's a tendency sometimes in data analysis just to produce the data analysis for the sake of the analysis, without maybe, to provide a whiz-bang result without really thinking of what the impact is going to be on the stakeholder. So how do you make sure that you manage that focus on serving the client through your analysis?
For me, it comes down to empathy and feelings, which data doesn't always equal feelings. That's not necessarily something that we directly correlate it to.
Data analysts do have feelings, by the way.
Do they?
We're very sensitive.
Should we run a model for that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So one thing that I've found, even with the toughest clients to the clients who are just starting their career and learning, with our data analysts and our salespeople, everybody is a human and a person. And it's not necessarily that I walk into a room and I ask them about their family and about what they do for fun on the weekends, which you can make small talk like that. But it's really understanding, why are we doing this? One of my favorite quotes is, you can't score a touchdown if you don't know where the end zone is. And that's for the analytics projects themselves. But as we get to know people and really lead with that empathy of understanding what their situation is, what they need to get out of this, and why they're doing it, it's a whole other level of how you can produce for them.
Yeah. By the way, thank you for that quote. It's a great reminder of the game last Friday night. Appreciate that. What can I say? I'm an Aggie fan. I'm just trying to throw a little morsel out there to our BYU students who are here. So. Well, thanks. This has been a little bit heavy for the last few minutes, so why don't we have a joke? I picked this one out for you, Matt, because you've got a physics degree. A physicist, a mathematician, and a statistician go hunting. They spot a deer, take aim. The physicist shoots and misses 10 feet to the right. The mathematician shoots and misses 10 feet to the left. The statistician says, "We got it!" There you go. I thought you'd like that as a physicist. All right, well, let's switch gears for just a second. Your resumes are impressive because, like I said, you guys have really bootstrapped. You've learned what you need to know so that you can make a contribution in this important area, connecting marketing with analytics. But for a student maybe right now who's in the sales program or marketing who hasn't taken a lot of analytics, what can you say to them? What advice can you give to them to make them not feel daunted by this kind of world of data that can seem, on the surface to be kind of crushing because we just talk all the time about how there's so much data that we have to pay attention to. But I think we all know that analytics is a spectrum. It's not a finite point. It requires I guess some literacy on the part of everybody, but it doesn't require the same level of expertise. So what kind of advice would you give to a student who maybe feels kind of daunted by this or feels like, I don't know if I can ever I really can never get up to speed on all these complicated things I hear about all the time?
I'll go first. So what I would recommend is understand that you don't have to know all of it, and that you don't, for example, we have a whole panel here of people that work in data, and then behind us at MarketStar, we have 40 or 50 other people also that are dedicated to this one topic of data and trying to find out the best ways to utilize it for our business. And then we have, I don't know what the number is now, 1,400 employees at the company that utilize this data. And so there's a place for every single person in this type of room and in setting to play on the team. And so what I would say is, as complex as data can be, and as complex as sometimes if Matt starts saying sentences and I don't understand most of the words he's saying.
Does that happen often?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It also can be very simple. Data can be used at a very simple rate, and so you don't have to go into every scenario thinking that you are going to need to know as much as the next person to utilize this data to make you a better employee or leader in a company. And so what you can probably have some comfort in is knowing that wherever you go to work, whether it's MarketStar or somewhere else, there's going to be a team that's going to know and understand that data. It's upon you to then ask and take the responsibility to ask questions so that you can kind of grasp it and understand it in the way that your mind thinks. Because the way that I might put together a graphic or a chart or an analyst project might not resonate with how you learn or how you interpret and understand the data. So asking questions, even though I know it's kind of cliche to say, there's no dumb questions or anything. In all reality, as you're going through and understanding data, there isn't. You need to be able to articulate back to somebody else what that data is trying to say. And if you don't understand the way that somebody else has put it together, ask and try to learn it so that you do have the ability to make data-driven decisions for yourself.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think a lot of what Kacey said is very true, and I think from a sales and marketing standpoint, data can be a little bit daunting, and just data analytics speaking to it in general. But I will say from our experience where we've worked heavily in sales and marketing, we've never had a client come to us and say, hey, tell me how we're going to do in Q4, tell me your gut instincts. Everyone wants a chart, everyone wants a graph, everyone wants to know that there's a data-driven decision behind it. So even though it might be a little bit uncomfortable, I would say even just understanding what are some of the questions that we should be asking, and then going to an expert and being able to say, help me get the technical piece of this done. And one of the risks that we find, and it happens a lot on our sales teams, is that there's sometimes non-consumption from our sales teams because they're afraid to ask and get their hands dirty in that spectrum. So I would say, don't be afraid to just delve into it, and people will be able to help you along the way.
I think there's a common denominator between the two, which is awesome.
I like the fact that you said common denominator. That's that appeals to me, Camille.
And it's communication. If you have to be good at communicating in analytics, you have to be good at communicating in sales. In fact, that's one skill across the board on both sides that I see that if you lack that skill set, you're going to struggle no matter what. But if you can really hone in on being able to communicate to that audience member, back to the WIFM, what's in it for them, you'll succeed.
Thank you very much. Anything to add, Matt?
Yeah, I guess just maybe echoing everything else. I think the same thing maybe from the other perspective. If you build the perfect analysis and nobody can use it because you missed the fundamental business problem that you're trying to solve, then it was a waste of time, right? And nobody's going to get value from that. So I think understand what the business processes are, and you're way ahead on being able to understand the data, because it's just a representation of a business process that's out there, right? And so if you get the process and really get that cemented in and learn that really well, the data literacy will come. And I guess just to reiterate what Camille was saying, for those of you who do go into analytics, that applies to you too. Make sure you understand the business problem you're trying to address, and that you can have those conversations to understand how what you're building is going to impact the business and the decisions that are being made.
Yeah, thanks. I think other faculty that I work with share that same message with students, that data analysis is not, you're not down in a troll cave pecking away at a computer. I mean, it's a very collaborative exercise. You work with multidisciplinary teams, and so all those skills, communication, being able to ask the right questions, those are, as important, easily, if not more, in data analysis. Just one quick question, and then we'll go to some Q&A from the students. So, students, start thinking of some questions. Okay, you've got some experts up here from MarketStar, so ask something good. Don't embarrass your school. But just real quick, like we said at the beginning, this has been awesome. To have this analytics track as a part of this marketing competition. I again just thank MarketStar for giving us this opportunity, and to Sterling for the groundwork he's laid and his invitation to participate in this. To all of you for helping out with this. So this is kind of, the analytics track at least is a little bit experimental. This was our first run. What are some of the highlights that you saw from this morning? Like, is there anything you saw from students that you thought, that was really interesting, or I learned something from that?
Yeah, I'll go first. Everyone that was in our group at least was amazing. So yeah, just congratulations to all of you that came out. Honestly, there was, for every group that came through, someone had displayed the data just in a little bit of a different way and thought about things that we hadn't necessarily thought about, and just had really great insight into the problem that we were trying to solve. So you were light years ahead of where I would have been coming out of college. I think you guys all did amazing, so good job.
Thanks, Diane. Any other kind of reflections on how that went this morning in your sessions? Go ahead, Camille.
It was incredible to me, the impactful way that you saw the data, you interpreted the data, but then you were able to make those recommendations. Like Diane, I don't think back in the day I would have been able to look at that same incredibly large piece of data and interpret the recommendations that you had. That's what I do every day in my job, however many years in my career, and many of you did that, which it was very impressive.
Thanks so much. Kacey?
Yeah, one thing I was going to say is I was in Camille's group, and we had three groups come and present to us, and all three had they came to different conclusions and different hypotheses about the data, which was interesting because while the case study and the data is exactly the same, each group independently kind of came to a different solution and recommendation for us to go into Q4 and how we're going to do this. So I think what's important to take from that is we don't know necessarily what that exact right answer is when we're using data. Data is something that we want to use to help us make decisions. And at the end of it, it's still a hypothesis until we go out and execute upon the kind of the things that the data is telling us. And so it was just really interesting to me. Each group came, did really well presenting the information, analyzed the data correctly, and then kind of gave different recommendations on how that would influence the results in Q4.
Thanks very much. Anything to add, Matt, about that?
I guess just to echo what's been said, I love the creativity and the different approaches to the problem that I saw, and really appreciated how the problem was broken down into kind of small pieces and analyzed individually. I thought the presentations went really well. Was super impressed.
Thank you so much. And now let's open it up for a few student questions. Do you need just one mic or both? Just one? Okay, good.
Anybody and everybody. Please stand up, say your name and the university that you're from.
Awesome. Okay. My name's Emily Christensen. I'm from BYU. So you mentioned a couple of times with the difficulties with working with data that what's changed is that companies and clients are more hesitant to give data. And so there's also like emerging trends with people being more concerned about privacy, and that will probably continue in that direction. I guess, how do you deal when you don't have enough data, or you would love to have more, but because of like restrictions from the client or data privacy, whatever it might be, how do you continue to make good insights and use those situations?
You do your best, first and foremost, but you have to have a reason why. If I went to someone who had very little money, someone who was very poor, and I said, "Oh, give me all your money, I'll take care of it," they're probably not going to. And even though these corporations are not poor in a sense, but they have to hold on to every single piece that they have, because if something wrong happens with it, then they will be poor. And so in a few cases, I'm not going to say the client's names, but these are large corporations, we have to go back and make the business case. And I would actually say even before then, our company, Matt is a huge part of this, has gone the extra mile to make sure that the data is secure. We can't just say, "Oh, we're going to take care of it, I promise." We have to back that promise. And that's with different type of security audits, lots of firewalls, whatever it may be. So we're doing our part to make sure it's secure, but we're also making sure that if there is a reason that we need it, we're communicating that over. It's rough, I will tell you. It's not easy.
That was a great question, too. I mean, because these kinds of security needs are just expanding as exponentially as the giant data pile. But Matt, what do you have to add?
Well, yeah, maybe I'd just add that same as what Camille said, data and value kind of go hand in hand, if that makes sense. And we, as individuals, make these decisions every day, right? Are we willing to share our emails with Google in exchange for free email service? Maybe we are, right? But you have to have something of value on the other end of that equation to explain why the data is okay, like why it's an acceptable exchange for us to be able to actually do the analysis, and provide that value. So being able to articulate that up front and say, here's what we're going to be able to provide for you, along with very exacting standards in terms of, yes, we've got the security, yes, we know the rules, yes, we respect your privacy, and we're going to care about whether this information is used ethically. I think you have to be thinking about all of those things to get to the point where you generate the trust that's necessary to get consumers, our clients, to give us the data and know that we're going to give them something good in return.
Thanks, great. Another question. Oh, just Wayne, there's one in the back, then we'll come up to the front.
Hi, I'm Gianna Flores. I'm from Utah Valley University. In careers, sometimes people struggle, have like a stumbling block I just had a question. If in your careers, what has been the hardest thing for you, and how have you been able to overcome that?
I feel like I'm talking a lot right now, but burnout is real, and that might seem you might be looking for a more specific example, but throughout my career, I have distinct points of where I kind of cracked. And when I look back at it, it's my time was focused on a lot of things and not the things that would have the biggest impact. And it's not to say that in those moments I could have just focused on something else or pushed things aside, but it really is a balance. I had a really hard time coming over from sales to the analytics team. It was a whole new world, different types of people, but I had a great support team behind me, and that allowed me that even though it was a difficult change, I didn't experience the burnout, and that I would say is the hardest part. Which students, you know what that's you know what that's like.
Yeah, Kacey.
So along those kind of same lines of that, for me, it's been imposter syndrome. If you're kind of familiar with that, just having this sense that either I am not qualified to maybe do a role, or I'm not skilled up enough to be able to tackle this new project or something. And overcoming that has been something I've had to do dozens of times in my career. And so as you're going and entering into the workforce, realize that you are capable and you are qualified to go ahead and take on that opportunity or that new job. If you're, I guess my recommendation is you're kind of looking to enter into the workforce and maybe take this with a grain of salt, but if you're already qualified on paper to do the role, you're going to get very bored and not learn in that role. So find an opportunity to challenge yourself and remove that imposter syndrome, or else you're probably going to, within 6 months to a year, be wanting to find something else. And so for myself, the biggest thing and challenge has been kind of overcoming that imposter syndrome. Every quarter, month, day, like it happens often. And luckily, hopefully you'll be surrounded by a great group and a great company like we are here, and that will really build you up and help you get over some of that fear.
Thank you, Kacey. Do you want to go to this question here from Wayne?
Thank you, and I'm from Utah State. My question has to deal with, it was I think, Camille, you alluded to it earlier, that sometimes, whether it's sales or people, they're afraid to dig into the data or to ask why. So my question is what questions would you have us students ask that we either don't know to ask or we are too afraid to ask?
It kind of goes back to the touchdown quote, but it's, what is your goal? If I would say in 99% of the cases, no matter what you're doing and who you're talking to, if you say, what is the goal, then you'll be there. I would say don't ask a question that there isn't a point to. It's okay to say, I don't know what to ask. Can you tell me a little bit more? So I know that's not a question, but whether it's sales or analytics, tell me more opens the gates to then discover those nuggets that you can ask questions about. So sorry, it's not very specific.
And maybe I'll just add to that. Maybe it's not always a question. Sometimes it's letting us know that it's not working for you, right? Like that's hugely important. If there's a piece of analytics that you're looking at and you don't feel comfortable making a business decision based on it, or you're not finding it useful, so you're not using it, we can't fix it unless we know that. And so it goes back to that partnership, right? Where if we're not providing value, we want to know. And if you're not sure how it's providing value, that becomes a moment where we can help to explain or discover that we actually hit the mark and we need to do something different.
Thank you, Matt. Camille, another question. We have time for, I think, a couple more questions. Here we go. We've got one
here in the
front
first.
and two in the back.
We'll go right here in the front first.
I'm Landon. I'm from SC Wow, SEU. What's a piece of advice that you would tell yourself as a young college student, knowing what you know now and the position that you hold now?
Yeah, I think when you graduate college, that's not the end of your learning. That's just the beginning. So for us, especially in the technology field, it's constantly figuring out ways to schedule time that you can keep up on the latest, greatest technologies and keep improving and training upon your current skill set. Because when you leave college, you've got a lot of classroom knowledge. In the business world, you get a little bit of business knowledge, but everything is changing so fast that I think that you just really need to make sure that you make a conscious effort that that is part of what you do every single week, and you're thinking about it every single day. What's the next thing that I need to learn? Because the minute that you stop doing that is the minute that you start becoming a little more irrelevant.
So Diane, just to put you on the spot then, what's the thing you're learning about right now? Like what's interesting to you and what are you learning about?
So actually I've been doing some online courses. So a company has given us access to things like LinkedIn Learning. So I go on there quite frequently and I learn about things, whether it's in a technical field, or I go on and learn about things like how to become more effective in communication, things like that. But I actually have been on Coursera doing some training on some Google Analytics. Actually kind of pushing on that. And a lot of it is stuff that I already know, but it's like good reminders and a lot of good frameworks that allow me to articulate that back down to my team.
Awesome, thanks. Let's see, we had a couple questions in the back.
My name is Jennifer. I'm from Utah State. I'm an Aggie. But my question has to do with data analytics. Sometimes when you get these large data sets, it's hard to find a stopping point. You could analyze and analyze and analyze and find correlations. And how do you know when you've gotten every insight out of the data that you can, or where's your stopping point? Because is it a deadline? Like what gets you there that this is we're done, we're moving on?
It's the old adage about torture the data until they confess. But Matt, do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, I guess, again, it comes back to business value. So usually we're trying to answer a question, right? And if that's, we need to optimize the business in some way, it gives you a goal, right? Something to work towards. And then it needs to be a collaboration too. I think you're completely right. You can continue to spend time doing analysis forever, right? Because there's always more to look into. To some extent, we almost try to take the same kind of approach as, I don't know if you've heard of agile software development, but this idea of building a little piece of improved decision-making, basically, and get that out quickly. Right, so it comes back to a collaboration with your business partners to say, hey, we found this piece. Does this look like it's something that we could move on and improve the business? And then we try it for a while, we measure it, see whether it's working, and then we come back and do it again. So I think there really isn't an end. It's a continuous process.
Thanks. Another question?
Yeah, Marcos Carlini from Weber State. Go Wildcats, right? So it goes back to that data question. In considering the size of clients that MarketStar has, does it ever come back that a client might have very adamant about a strategy that they have, believing that they believe that that's the structure they should follow, but the data that they send you doesn't support that, right? For example, then how do you? First of all, does that happen? Does that happen often? And two, how do you go about then making your point of saying, well, this is what we believe actually is going on, or what needs to happen in order to give you value, like you said, Matt?
Wow, that is a great question. When do the data? When are the data telling you something that the client might not want to hear? What do you do about that?
This is my life. And it happens. It happens all the time. Sometimes, even if we present it the best way possible, even if we prove it with data, the client still goes another way. It's the best when we were right, of course. I talked about this with Diane on the way up here. In business relationships, there are those that I would call almost like they're dictators, and that it's I know best, I'm king, like all that kind of stuff. And I feel like that's very 1990s era. where it's the people who are willing to be partners, who are willing to learn. And mind you, they are absolutely experts in their field. I know in most scenarios, the clients that I work with are far better educated than I am. But because we are experts in the space of what they're asking, and because the devil is in the details, you can't hide much when the data is telling you something. We do our best to communicate it, and it's those partnerships that we have when it can go back and forth to find that solution. But it absolutely happens where try as you might, it doesn't go the way you want. But it's about making sure you've done all you can do and doing your legwork, definitely doing as much as you can beforehand. But I actually don't have a perfect answer because that happens all day, every day.
That's great. It's at least interesting to know. Any other kind of comments about that?
I'll just quickly touch on it. So I think one of your other questions was like, how do you bring it up to them? And yeah. So this kind of role-playing case study that we did today is a prime example of those opportunities. So we meet with our clients regularly. Some of them are going to be on a daily basis. Others may be on more of a weekly or monthly basis in cadence. So you have to first build that trust with them that when we are making these recommendations, and really the only way you can build that trust is through performance and actually hitting marks or maybe making recommendations and having them play out correctly. But as you start to build that trust in those specific scenarios where you're having regularly scheduled meetings with those clients, they're going to be much more receptive. So I would say, I don't know if the word's rare, but as soon as you kind of have that relationship with them, a lot of those walls are going to come down. And in fact, what we come to find out is that they typically come to us and ask us what they should do before we even give them the recommendation, because of the success that we might have had with other previous recommendations. So as Camille kind of mentioned, it might be a little more old school for somebody to have their guards up and just be like, nope, it's our way or the highway. They've hired MarketStar specifically because we pride ourselves on being their partner and are going to be able to not only provide them the performance, but also those key insights that they're looking for along the way.
That's a great insight and great place to wrap it up before we go to lunch. I just want us to show our appreciation one more time for Camille, Matt, Diane, Kacey. Thank you so much for being with us today and for helping us with this panel.